DevCentral Community, it's RSA week. And normally we would be in San Francisco, the city by the bay. But today we're hanging out with you live stream here on DevCentral Connects. I'm John. This is Jason. How's it going, my friend?
Fantastic. How about yourself?
Man, just could not be better. I used to know a guy back in the day. I would say, hey, how's it going? And he said, if I was doing any better, I'd have to change doctors, which I have no idea what that means. But I suspect it means that he was doing well. You know, he was having a good day. So, yeah. So the same is true here. So man, it's RSA time. So it's been a good couple of days so far, right?
It has. Yeah, I've really enjoyed the sessions that I've done. Of course, we're going to talk about those a little bit later. In fact, I just got out of one that I'm really excited to talk about, but that's Thursday's show. So I will hold off because our guest on Thursday, we're going to kind of dig into some of those details. So it'll be good. And that's, by the way, Mario Platt is going to join us on Thursday for a little look at what comes after the CIA triad when it comes to threat modeling. So, yeah.
Nice. Not just Mario Platt. We like to call him Super Mario Platt, right?
There you go.
That's awesome. No, that'll be great. That'll be great. Well, hey, so today, as we connect with all of you out there, like we always do, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, all the places, we're talking about failing forward safely or well, as it were, with a solid response plan. And it made me think about just like the whole response plan, like responding to things and all that. I looked up this little survey that this company did back a couple of years ago where they sent customers and then the companies, like 1,000 different companies and then like 1,000 different customers that interacted with those companies, a couple of like simple questions about the customer response or the responsiveness of, the company. And so while I know it's not directly related to how you respond to like a disaster or security incident or whatever, I just thought it was interesting the responses, as it were, from these surveys. And effectively, it was like, hey, the survey said, hey, company, how good are you at responding to your customers? And I think like 90% of them, thereabouts, of the companies said, hey, we believe that we're responsive and that we're good and all of that. Things are going great. And I'll give you, what do you think the number was from the customer side on how many of them thought things were going great?
I'm no prognosticator, but I'm guessing it's nowhere close to 90.
Exactly. Order of
I'd say 10.
Right. Yeah, it was like 8%. 8% of the customers said, yeah, things are going well, which, in reverse, if you will, like 92 were like, no, things are not going well. And it was stuff like, hey, do you respond to your customers' emails? Do you acknowledge that an email has been received in your, customer service process and all that? And most of them were like, no, we don't do that. Yeah. Which does not shock me. It's a crazy thing. So it's like, hey, when you have a response plan, you need to follow the thing, and it needs to be a good one, kind of a thing.
Yeah. Having a plan at all is kind of a good thing, right?
Yes. So goodness, man. But a lot of people don't have them, and then stuff happens, and it's like, man, what's going on here? So yeah, it's good to think about these things, right?
It is, yeah. In fact, not to throw Zillow under the bus, but about a week but I will. It's like that whole thing. It's like not to throw so and so under the bus, but I'm going to do exactly that now.
Right.
They listed. So my grandparents live out in California in the Bay Area, and they're out and somebody's, oh, you sold your house? I'm surprised to see you still here. It's like, no. We did not sell our house. Well, on Zillow, it's showing that your house has been sold. And so, they called me. And so, I started to look into, property titles and tax, stuff for Alameda County and digging into all of that. But with Zillow, they're showing that they're linked, saying, "Hey, we're seeing this on a public record." However, I cannot find that public record. So I emailed Zillow. It's like, "Hey, I think you have a mistake in your system here." Yeah, no. I have like a week and a half later, I've got nothing. So Zillow, if you're watching this, hey, return my email, so we can get this thing worked out. But yeah. And in that whole process, I started looking to. I remember a long time ago, I was listening to Sean Hannity on the radio, and he was advertising that Title Lock company because my first thought was, because I'd heard the advertisements, is like, oh, somebody like had their deed transferred into their name, and they started taking out all kinds of loans and all that kind of stuff. But then I started looking into the Title Lock, and that whole thing is not even insurance and looks like a total scam. So,
of course it is.
Right.
Of course.
Like, hey, we're here to help you empty your wallets into ours.
Right. What I'd like to do is transfer the money from your wallet to my wallet. That would be helpful.
That's right.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, I mean, but that's a good example of like, hey, Zillow, just respond. If nothing else, say, hey, we got your email. We're going to be looking at it or whatever.
Exactly.
Something. But but as it turns out, there's nothing. So anyway, like I said, I know that's not precisely today's topic in terms of, failing forward, as it were. But in terms of having an incident response plan, it's like, hey, we need to be able to respond in an appropriate way. So it's a good thing to think about.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So, we're gonna get into that stuff. So before we do, we have a fantastic guest for our show today. Yep. And he's actually a friend of ours. So he's an aficionado of antique typewriters and cameras, a lover of every U.S. government system known to man. And when it comes to food, it might as well be chicken because it all tastes like it anyway. Right. Please welcome to DevCentral Connects, Mr. Jason Hardy.
Hi, everyone.
All right, Jason, welcome to the show.
Hi there. Thanks for having me.
Awesome.
First of all, I didn't drop your current position in the intro, but currently you are the Chief of Staff for the National Personnel Records Center at the National Archives, and that's right here in St. Louis?
Yes, sir. Yeah, North County.
Nice. So, we can't claim John in our area anymore because he chose to leave and relocate to the great state of Arkansas. And so, he's no longer one of the Lou or the 314. So, Jason and I can have our little conversation. In fact, John, we're just going to put you down there on the bottom now. So,
well, I am further south now, so it only makes sense, right?
Fair point. And right. If we're going to be geographically correct here, Jason's further west than I am. So
that's right.
We'll flip that around.
Jason Rahm is across the river. That's right. Exactly.
That's Good right. Okay, so before we get into the conversation here, anybody out there, you have any comments about what's going on with RSA or incident response, or some other security thing that we might queue up for later after our segment with Jason? Drop that in the comments. So Jason, right. We have obviously with Colonial a couple weeks ago with the pipeline ransomware, and they shut the pipeline down. That's obviously incidents happen, and how it happened, and then the analysis, the root cause of how it happened, is usually what gets the most amount of press. But how you respond to these things is important, and obviously they were shut down for quite a while before they came back up, and had a little bit of impact out there on the West Coast. My son almost didn't get to come home from college because he was on vapors trying to get to a gas station out there in Lynchburg, Virginia. So, where does incident response come into, not just like high profile attacks like this, but even in, the small mom and pop shops out there?
In terms of incident response, I'll go back to some of our mutual friends are pilots, and part of pilot training is that not only do you have the fancy flight simulators where you can rehearse these emergencies before the emergencies actually happen. There's a rigid thought process to identify those threats, those possible outcomes, and pre-plan what to do, your response plan. already beforehand, because you really don't want to wait till something hits the fan before you figure out what to do. And my concern with the Colonial event, and of course you can only rely on what's actually gets reported. I get the sense that their preparation and defensive mechanisms weren't exactly up to par, because this type of the kind of attack that they saw, these are not ultra fancy, and at least from my experience. So was it avoidable? In my opinion, probably yes. But I thought the response plan itself was kind of weak.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. In fact, I read something this morning that I don't know if it's true or not, but a report that the operational technology actually wasn't compromised. It was only the information technology, the IT side of the house, and it was a billing system that was attacked. And they're like, well, so let's see, if we could keep the pipeline open while we do our stuff, but we can't bill if our IT system's down. So let's shut the whole thing down. Don't know if that's true or not. That's just a report I read this morning, and I'm like, okay, guys, that's not cool.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's one of the things that I was wrestling with in my line of work. We process records requests. So in my facility, we have records dating all the way back to the Spanish-American War for every veteran. And we process anywhere between 4,000 to 5,000 requests a day. And so in a nutshell, if you can imagine what an information factory looks like, that's my building. Our job is to take requests that come in and find the right paper record, pull out the necessary documents to satisfy the request. So like any, and for clarity's sake, not all government agencies are funded by Congress, right? Ours is something called a working capital fund or revolving fund. So we're set up just like a commercial business. Our financials are based on the same model. We earn the cash that we have to spend, so we become very careful on how we spend our money, whether it be investments in technology or security or stuff like that. So anyway, back to the Colonial issue, there's two things, right? There's the product itself, and then there's the administrative oversight, the financials, for example, the financial systems. They're interrelated, but they're two different parts of the business. And you really shouldn't have only one response plan. Your response plan should address the different components of the business separately. Because I like, if that happened to our organization, I couldn't imagine shutting down and not doing any work. Even during COVID, we still had a small team of people that handled all of the emergency requests. So you just can't not push the product.
Right. Yeah. Especially for critical things like personnel records, obviously for, military and whatnot is a critical thing. Pipeline is a critical infrastructure. Yeah. And, not having competitors for pipeline, is also a challenge. Not that we're going to slight political here, so I will get off of that. But yes, that's because there's all kinds of talk around nationalizing infrastructure and all that, like pipeline and all that. That's its own conversation. We could do that another day. But when you talk about incident response, we have, in this case for Colonial, we have IT and we have OT. And in your experience, do you see that companies are having merged plans, or do they actually have separate incident response plans for both?
I think there's value, and just like and I'm sure John remember, and you too, Jason, when we were back at the military base, the exercise plans has many different components, and there is definitely value in exercising whatever the fictitious event is, and walking through, whether it be a tabletop exercise or real, no kidding, lockdown, people outside banging on your door, depending on the degree of realism. But it's always good to exercise the plan, even if it's a subset or the total. And of course, the ideal is you exercise the whole thing at the same time, and you see how the bits and pieces fall or fail, and you can, fix those things.
Yeah. Do you think there's room for something like a chaos monkey, like what Netflix has? Of course they have a whole suite of monkeys now, but something like a chaos monkey in infrastructure in OT, because I'm thinking that maybe on a small scale you could have something like that to prepare you in real live incident responses that don't leave your own doors, but then also you don't want to kill people by breaking the life preserving systems in an OT system.
Your modern security lingo eludes me. What's a chaos monkey?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So in Netflix has all these tools that go out and systematically break, kind of like when we did exercises out there, it's like, okay, we're going to fail this. Or in, simulator training, when you're flying an F-16 and all of a sudden you lose your guide by wire, and what do you do now? So, it's kind of that thing. The chaos monkey will go out and just break stuff. And
that's really cool.
And staying alive and up and serving your customers is the goal. So it's like they design around the thing, not just how do I make things work, but how do I make sure that the system self-heals.
That is very cool. I'm gonna have to look that up myself. Thanks for that. That's one tidbit I've just learned today. That's cool.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
The chaos monkey, man. Yeah. Jason Hardy, I remember all those exercises, and man, what a pain sometimes to be like, oh my goodness, it's like exercise. The base just blew up. So everyone, whatever, mop 4 gear, it's all chem warfare, whatever, right? It's all the stuff. But those are super necessary. In fact, one little quick funny story that I remember. So when I was active duty, I used to be active duty military, and we were running this exercise one time. And we were out in the woods, and it was kind of this real life, hey, you gotta, there's people shooting at you and all that stuff, right? But it was an exercise. And I remember one of my buddies was like low crawling in this one little spot, and he crawled up on like a fire ant mound. And legitimately, okay, so fire ants are not an exercise, right? This is not. So he was like doing this thing, and we're all, kind of in this exercise mode and mindset and whatever. And then all of a sudden we hear real world, fire ants all over my body. And I'm like, wait, so it took us a second because we're in that exercise mode, like mindset. We're like, no, Bill over here, he's just messing with us, whatever. And then there's the ants like all over. So it was just kind of funny, but it just proves the importance of saying, hey, you've got to exercise the plan. And in my experience, there's never a good time. It's never convenient, but it's super important.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Yeah. You talk about fire ants. If you guys have not seen Tim Hawkins' Fire Ants, just go, pause this. No, I'm kidding. Don't pause this. Stay here with us. But after this show, Tim Hawkins' Fire Ants on YouTube, you will not be sorry. It's a great little comedic song. But okay, so what is an incident response plan? Do you have like on your end, do you have steps that you guys take from obviously you have an incident? How do you go about defining what an incident response plan includes? What does it look like?
Well, and I'm not quite sure if this is universal across the federal agencies in terms of naming convention, but conceptually, our plan itself starts with, and this is one of the things that I do appreciate my own agency, despite the fact that we're about 15 years behind everybody else in terms of technology, is that there's a very strong focus on what is the nature of the business. So from a criticality perspective, right? What does it mean? And operating like a commercial business, what part of our infrastructure? And when I say infrastructure, it's loosely, I'm loosely referring to whether it be IT or business process or even employee development or even HR onboarding. Those are components that allow our business to function.
Right.
So each aspect of the business has a different impact value. So we start with the impact value of the individual component of the business, which pieces would put us at dead stop, which ones would allow us to limp along, and if we can limp along, how long can we limp along? So the plan is tailored around what the business needs to function, in near term and also from a recovery perspective.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm envisioning flow charts and matrices and all the eye candy that gets me excited when I'm looking at any kind of a plan.
Yeah.
Okay, just real quick, I want to say hi to a couple people. Josh, thanks for being here. Josh is one of our regular viewers, and as well, Daniel, future show idea, absolutely IT versus OT. That would be a good talk for us to have. And then the architecture and needs of both, because they're very different. And so absolutely, we'll put that on the docket and get some experts in here to break all that down. All right. So how do you measure your response itself? Because a lot of the measurement of an incident tends to come to, the financial cost of the incident itself, rather than, is my incident response plan a good one? Did we succeed in how we wanted to achieve response? So how do you go about that?
Going back to the example in terms of looking at decomposing the business into its constituent components. As we define the criticality of each of those components, we also define what is a functional level, a minimally functional level, and what is an ideal functional level. So for us, it's pass fail at the bare minimum versus how quickly can we get to the initial return to operation to an ideal level of operation. So those are the two checkpoints, so to speak, that we can measure how successful a plan would be for those components.
Okay. What about postmortems? Do you recommend a postmortem for like the entire thing, soup to nuts, or individual step postmortems? Like, okay, here's the postmortem for why the heck did they get in the first place, and then the postmortem for here's how we responded and what did we do? What did we do well? What did we fail at?
Well, from just speaking from my past experience with my agency so far in the last 10 years, and I'm trying my best to not laugh, because we spend an inordinate amount of time with recovery, and not enough time on after action analysis. And unfortunately, because of that, we have a tendency to relearn the same lessons to be learned each time. And it does get old and gets frustrating sometimes.
Yeah. Is after action analysis, is that the new postmortem, or is like that the AAA
from military exercises, right? Almost after every event, whether it be a real world shooting event or a military exercise, you have an AAR, an after action review, and that's when usually people get called on the carpet and asked, okay, you were supposed to do A, B, and C. Where were you? What were you doing? And why didn't you do? And learn from those things.
That when your OPRs and your EPRs go south.
Well, plus Jason, Rom, having an AAA or AAR fits in line with the 3-letter acronym requirement. So you can't say postmortem. That's not 3 letters, right?
True.
So you have to have a 3-letter acronym, or as we say, a TLA, a 3-letter acronym.
There you go.
Requirement.
You get Adrian Cronauer from Good Morning Vietnam to work that into his little spiel in the office.
Exactly.
Which was amazing.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay, so
awesome.
from the standpoint of Colonial, in at least is what we've read, because we tend to be very soundbitey and we react immediately. We don't really know all the details yet, but based on what we've read, what did they do right? What did they do wrong?
I really struggle with that, and exactly as you just said, you don't know what you don't know, right? And what is that? One of the universal quotes that I remind my staff regularly is, in the absence of information, drivel fills the space. So when you're missing real interesting information, actionable information, to quote that military parlance again, you tend to kind of fill in the blanks with stuff, and unfortunately, what we fill the blanks with is never the good stuff. So I'm sure Colonial, they have been in business for a very long time. It's likely they have taken care of the critical components, the actual pipeline control mechanicals, and protected those. And it's likely it's just the administrative and financial system that was impacted. I hope to God that's the result, because even in the worst case scenario, and that it was the financial system, there are different ways of recovering from that. Would it have been cheaper to pay the $500 fee to have it released? Don't know. That becomes a cost benefits analysis that the C-suite people would have to make. Did they do the right thing? 10 years ago, I would have jumped at a solution and said, no, these guys really screwed up. But given my own experience, our experience collectively over the years, I'm a little hesitant to pass judgment.
Yeah. I'm curious to see how insurance markets are going to spin up around stuff like this, right? It's like, I think I'll get some ransomware insurance so that, if I have to pay a $5 million charge, then I'll be covered for that. At least you'll be able to amortize that over time. There probably are already insurance markets for that.
There is a friend of mine down in Houston does that, not for oil industry, but for a whole different industry. And what she described was, it's a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing that you have insurance now, so conceivably they would assume the financial hit. But the curse is the insurance company have a much tighter auditing process. So they'll give you the money and they'll give you the insurance, but they're going to come in and they will comb your system top to bottom. So I guess it's good and bad depending on how you look at it.
Well, I guess even in the bad, that's good, right? Because you have a third party interest to provide that audit, so that you have accountability for your own staff. And really, at the end of the day, that staff usually ends up being the executives that don't prioritize the spend. And so, it's your security guys is like, hey, we need this spend, and like, we'll wait until we're breached the third time, and then we'll spend the money. So,
yep. It's and another thing I thought about with the insurance, historically, insurance companies, not to throw them under the bus or whatever, but they're going to look at the policy and they're going to say, did you abide by the rules of this contractual policy, right? And so if you had some kind of ransomware attack, but then you come to find out, well, you didn't patch any of your systems, you didn't invest in whatever practices, then the insurance company is going to say, we're not paying it. You're on your own. That could be a tough one.
Yeah.
So, not to go too heavily into the political, at least the partisan politics of it, but Biden had an executive order just kind of looking into hey, maybe we need a little bit more regulation around critical infrastructure and all that. And, how can the government and private industry partner better together for things like that, like third-party audits and all that? Because the payment card has its own industry. It's not really government-led. It's, hey, Visa, MasterCard, all these, we don't want to overpay on false charges, so we are going to moderate you. The critical infrastructure like oil obviously is not self-regulating in that way, and so how do you see a path forward for the government to have a hand in regulation in a way that doesn't become heavy-handed or so much red tape that they hurt more than they help?
I think that's a deep question full of landmines. What is it?
Hey, we've already thrown enough people under the bus on this call, so go ahead and drop a couple landmines too.
So it's okay. What is that expression? To hammer everything looks like a nail.
That's right.
And that's that. Anytime when I hear government putting some policies in place or the knee-jerk reaction of government do something about this. What always concerns me is the statement by Reagan decades ago, right? hi, I'm from the government, I'm here to help you. It never ever works right. Does the government have a role in this? I agree. I definitely do believe that they do. Again, decades ago, Jesus, I'm showing my age. Decades ago, critical industries like steel production industries, fuel industries, utilities, power generation, and stuff like that were considered to be national security infrastructure. And because of that, government had a very rigid set of rules in terms of what could be offshored and what could not be, what could be sold off, what couldn't be. And they were very rigid, but they were rigid because those constraints were put in place after World War II. I mean, we had just gone through a very important series of lessons learned, and we didn't want to repeat the struggles that we had,
Yeah.
So there's definitely a role and a place for government to levy structures like that. But at the same time, what we're seeing in modern times is that the commercial industry is much quicker in reacting, much quicker in adapting. So if I were elected for a day, I would say, government will have a seat at the table, right?
Yeah.
But more as a facilitation role and less as a hammer looking for nails.
So more as it's like you said, an advisory role to where there's some guidance, but and maybe this is an opportunity for, whether it's pipeline or other infrastructure to, hey, get yourselves together and work out the plan, because if you don't, the government will at some point, right? So, right.
Yeah. And when you say the government will intervene. They may not actually work anything out.
They will give it their best government try. Yep. Yeah, Daniel, you're exactly right. Credit card companies fix their problem by placing the burden on companies that rely on their service. Yep.
Yeah. Elbow cough. You put a little elbow cough in there. Yeah, exactly. So they just kind of pass it on, to the next person down the line.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a challenge.
And sometimes it's necessary.
Yeah.
Hey, one quick thing that I thought of too is in the context of incident response and failing and having a plan, a response plan, and all that is, you think about if I had a company, let's just say, and I was like, all right, I need to think through, what are some of the practical ways that we may respond to an incident. And then if I was going to run through an exercise plan like we did back in the military or whatever kind of days, then, you're going to base that on a pretty, pretty reasonable scenario, something that might actually happen. Right. And so it just occurs to me, especially in the wake of this Colonial Pipeline and ransomware attack, ransomware is just prevalent these days. It's all over the place. So anyway, I just wanted to say, for companies out there that want to run an incident response plan, form it around a ransomware attack, because chances are you're going to get ransomware attacked. And it's the age-old question: do we pay the ransom or do we not? And if you say no, we're not going to pay the money, then what do you do, right? Or what do you do if you do pay the money also? All that stuff.
Yeah,
So,
I hope your backup systems work well. So,
right.
That should probably be part of your test plan if you're not going to pay the ransom. So.
That's right. Yep. And I mean, I know there's both sides of that coin. Like, hey, we pay the ransom, then suddenly we get the keys to decrypt everything, or maybe we don't. That's that whole thing.
Yeah.
But if we don't pay the ransom, then our stuff stays encrypted, and we know it's going to stay encrypted, which leads, of course, to, hey, have we done proper backups and all that stuff? Or maybe we call up Jason Hardy and say, hey, you own all the National Archives, right? So you should have a copy of everything.
That's right.
Yeah, no.
Nice.
Yep.
Nice.
All right. Well, go ahead, Jason.
I've been out of the information system security space for too long. At one time early on, this is of course, Jason, when you and I had worked in the same office. One of the ideas we were toying with was systems that are expendable. Having your publicly exposed systems, or having the system that had the highest possibility of breach being truly expendable. And worst comes to worst, you shut down, wipe everything, and come back up. And but it's such a basic fundamental restore that the data is saved somewhere else, and there's other things to consider. But I wonder, has that space grown at all? The concept of designing the system and the network architecture in a way that there are bits and pieces that are easier to kill off and replace.
Yeah. So in you're talking about the expendable crewmen, right? The red shirts in Star Trek. Yes. So yes, absolutely. I think that having whether it's a web server or a database server, even that's cloud architected and it sits in a container, and the instance itself is immutable, and it's it's connecting to data, but anything on that system itself is unchanging. And so you're accessing the data from those systems. But if you're making a code change in that system, it's a completely new container. You're not changing the containers themselves. So in that aspect, there's a lot of growth and improvement there, I think.
Yep.
So
yeah, critical.
Peter Silva, always there in the chat for us, posted up the application and protection report of ransom and redemption. Absolutely. So we'll get into that report on tomorrow's show with Sander, and so that'll be a good conversation. And
sure will.
Yep, and that's from F5 Labs. Yep. And so Daniel Wolf, hey, another one of our regular viewers. Yeah. Welcome, Daniel Wolf. But isn't only ransomware from 2020 and double extortion or double encryption backup alone might not be enough. It depends, I guess, on how connected your backups are to your your live infrastructure. Because you're right, if your backups are accessible systems where that's spreading in your environment, then your backups are encrypted too, and that's bad news. So definitely have to think about that from an architecture standpoint, and what flows where, and how those are managed.
Well, and to that point quickly as well, as you go through the response part of that, let's just say you're running a scenario where, hey, we got ransomware attacked, and now we've got to figure out how to decrypt everything, or to his point, maybe the backups are encrypted too, or whatever. It's this whole mess. But then the other part of that, to Daniel's point, is the extortion part, and saying, hey, the attacker now has all of our data, and they're going to release it all the PII stuff or all the whatever. And so that's a little bit different mindset to talk through and say, how do we react to that part of it? So it's a good scenario to walk through and think about.
Yeah, for sure. So, all right. Well, Jason, we're at the end of our time with you, and so thank you for coming on and joining us today. It was a blast, and hopefully we can have you back at some time in the future.
I would love to. My pleasure. Thanks, everyone.
Good to see you, Jason.
Appreciate you, Jason. All right. That was cool.
Wow, that was awesome. Yeah, that's great. That's great. Good to see Jason Hardy again.
I know. Yeah, Jason and I go way back. I think it was 2002 when I started working in Jason's office out there at the Air Force Base, and we worked a contract for a couple of years together. And government contracting is a weird thing, because I think I worked for 3 different companies in that 2 years, and I started there, and then we lost the contract, and then I got like the eve of my daughter's birthday. I'm sorry, the actual birthday, when she was born. I got called into the office like, hey, we lost the contract, and sorry, you're not going to be employed by us anymore. So enjoy your parental, enjoy the birth of your daughter. And so anyway, like 2 weeks later, I come off of parental leave, and I think I have 1 week left in the contract before it switches hands. And then I get a call from the people who won the contract, say, hey, how would you like to stay in your same job? We're going to pay you a little less money. We're going to give you a few less benefits, but you get to sit at the same desk and answer the same phone and do the same thing. It's like, sounds like a winner. So
yeah, really appreciate that. So nice of you all. Yeah, I tell you, man, you talk about incident response and just that scenario. I mean, I used to see it all the time with government contracts, and it happens all the time, even to this day. It's like the government, it's going to cycle through their whole contracting process of, what company do we want to do this specific job? And, today it's company X, tomorrow it's company Y. And, it's a constant turnover of companies, at least. Maybe not all the people, to your point. You worked for this company, then you worked for that company. So, Jason Rahm is still sitting in the seat, or maybe not, right? So, which is a reason that it's like, with this whole view of incident response and fail forward and all that, you've got to constantly exercise these plans because you've got constant turnover,
Right. Yeah, that's a really good point on whether it's a government contractor or, a high turnover office. You can have the best plan in the world, but if you're not executing it with the staff that you have currently, then then you might as well not have a plan at all. Because if that thing's in a dust jacket, with an inch of dust on top of it, and it's never been opened, your system has likely changed so much in the time where you check the box to create the plan for whoever audited that it's not going to work for you. And I know, just back to my network infrastructure days, that was a big proponent for us to have active systems and not do HA from a active standby, is because every system in place always had traffic on it, so we knew it worked. Because if you had DR plans but you never tested them, then you don't really know that DR is going to work. But I think the same is true in security. If you don't test the plan, you might as well not have one. Yeah, because it's just for show. You check the box for whoever made you do it, but it's not really a part of your security culture.
Yeah. I think was it Daniel Pacheco earlier talking about PCI compliance? Some companies, dare I say, they'll be like, hey, you have to have a WAF, let's say, protecting your application. And so they turn on a WAF, but it doesn't have an active blocking policy on it, stuff like that. And it's like, okay, yeah, we have one, but it doesn't do anything. So I think we've kind of missed the point there, Yeah, it's important stuff to think about. And I would say this too quickly on, like, when you exercise these disaster response plans and all that, you like you said, you want to have the response part. You don't just want the disaster. We want the disaster response, appropriate response. And I would say my mind kind of went back to some of the training that we've had to do over the years of, like, the information security. Hey, don't click on a spam, or a phishing email and whatever. And these things used to be like an annual training. And it was like, hey, you're going to have to spend the next 2 hours clicking through this little web-based or computer-based training. And it's like, oh my goodness, man, just, put me out of my misery. And it was horrible, And I know at F5, we've moved more to a model of, hey, we're going to give you a quick little, 15, 20-minute training, maybe once a month or once every couple of months or whatever. So I think that's maybe something to think about with respect to running through these incident response plans, is don't make it so burdensome on your team that everyone's just ready to, gouge their eye out at the end of the day. It's like, man, so make it, digestible where it's not so burdensome. Right.
Right. Yeah. Those 15-minute snacks are definitely, it's like in today's short attention span theater, it's important to make things a little shorter. Because you're right. It's easy to tune out, and it's, just click the buttons and you take the quiz and you move on. But I think those are definitely more helpful in snack size.
Yeah. And I don't know, they tend to stick in your brain a little bit better. Like your mind kind of tends to be on that topic a little bit more when it's more frequent, but quicker than just, oh my goodness, I dread, the month of June or whatever it is, that's the incident response month or whatever. And so maybe, I don't know, maybe if you can't put it on a TikTok video in 60 seconds or less, forget it. It's not going to work.
That's funny. I think they should become TikTok videos, because you think about it's like, I still know to today how US bills work because of, I'm just a bill, I live on Capitol Hill. Those during the cartoons, they would throw just civics related things out there. And it's, I think that's good because that stays with you.
Yeah. Schoolhouse Rock, man. Yeah.
That's right. I was trying to remember Schoolhouse Rock. Daniel's like, don't make it any shorter.
No. Daniel, what we might do is just do a series of like 60 consecutive TikTok videos for DevCentral Connects. And then it's still an hour long. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
Yeah, Josh,
So-
Hey, Josh, drop one of the ones you found particularly amazing in the comments, because I want to watch it later. I'm not really a TikTok user, and so I don't say really. I am not a TikTok user, but I've seen stuff that's shared, and some of it's pretty amazing. So I'd like to see one of the tech ones. I remember watching. It wasn't TikTok. It was somebody did a rap on BGP. And it was like, you down with OPP, but it's like, you down with BGP, and it's like the whole song was about BGP, and it was amazing. So, it's like you want to know all of your route selection attributes. He goes through all of them, so it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, super cool. It's creative, and I tell you, man, those things are challenging to be creative like that and effective. And I mean, it takes some work and some time, but can be good.
Yeah.
So,
well,
awesome.
even you and I, it's like we have some internal training that we've done in this format, kind of making it kind of fun and informative. Right. And we're working with the training department, and we're delivering a little bit of security training internally that's maybe just a little less
boring. Right.
I was looking for the right word, but yes, that's apt. That is
the word
is
quite
boring.
Apt. Yeah.
There you go.
Man, nobody likes it. It's like, oh my goodness, man, got to sit through this again. So anyway, I didn't mean to go on and on there, but Oh, there's one, a TikTok from Josh.
There you go. So everybody go check that out. I'm not endorsing. I'm just saying that Josh has shared something that's tech and amazing. So I'll go out and check that out later. Thank you, Josh.
Yeah, good to go, man. Awesome.
All right,
well, hey, man. So
John, tell me about your RSA. How has RSA been for you yet?
Yeah, it's been good, man. So yesterday was like the opening keynote, and got to hear from some great industry leaders, the RSA president guy, and all that stuff. One of the ones that I thought was fascinating was the cryptographers panel, and I heard someone talk at one point about when in certain industries, if you think about whatever, like the automobile industry, you have like you got Ford, and you got some of these guys that are way back in the day, or whatever, these pioneers in their industry, and we look back and they're long gone now, but they did amazing things. But in the industry of like cryptography and information technology and all that, these guys are still out there. Like they're on the panel yesterday, like literally. And in fact, this happened in real life, like a couple of RSAs ago. I don't even remember which one it was, 2 or 3 years ago. I was in the Moscone Center in San Francisco, and I was sitting in I think it was at the cryptographers panel, and you had Revest, Shamir, and Edelman all sitting there together. And I'm like, daggone. I mean, there is RSA. It's not just an acronym. Those are the 3 guys that are RSA. Anyway, I say that to say Revest and Shamir were in the cryptographers panel yesterday, and it was just kind of cool to hear, where they think things are going. And there were others in there as well, like super smart people, and it's awesome. One of the things that Ron Revest said, he's an MIT professor and just like super duper smart guy, obviously. But one of the things that he talked about was just the basics of security and how it needs to be simple, or else it's not going to be implemented or effective. And so we need to simplify it as much as we can. And he talked about that in the context of machine learning. And that's kind of one of the big things, AI, ML, all that stuff, right? And he said, one of the challenges with machine learning is that it becomes so complex so quickly. There's 1,000 different, factors and all that stuff that go into play with that it can be a challenge to maybe have people fully accept it and start to use it, the way that they maybe should or would. So anyway, the key on that was keep it simple in order for it to be effective. And I thought that was just a good kind of overall comment.
Yeah. Well, and to piggyback on the machine learning a little bit, I mean, right, it's all based on human assumptions, right? And you're training it on what you think, not necessarily what is necessary or what is true. And so the opportunity for bias and falsity you may train it in a way it should go, and it goes a completely different way than what you intended. And so,
Like, no.
yeah.
Well,
And
don't go that way.
I missed Bruce Schneier's keynote last night. I hope to. I saved an article to read on it later. I just haven't had time yet today. But I had to break away it last night. Did get a chance to watch that, but I know he talked about AI and the coming attackers with how they apply AI to attacks. Because with some of our technology with Shape and using AI on the defense, certainly it's going to be whack-a-mole in the AI world as well, where you've got your AI attackers and your AI defenders, and I think eventually all of us will be sitting in a room with popcorn, watching Joshua play itself on the global thermonuclear war up on the NORAD screens or whatever. So
Yep. Yeah, it's a crazy thing. Just the machines are taking over, kind of a deal. But one of the other things that they mentioned in that panel was they asked each of the panelists to give a grade to like designers, like application designers, application developers, and then also the cryptographers, like how has everyone been doing? And now, Grant, I don't know. I mean, these are all cryptography people. So they were like, hey, cryptography gets a pretty decent grade. I think we've done well in terms of the algorithm strength and all that stuff. But they said app developers need to kind of get it together. They get, I think Shamir gave them an F, is what he said. Wow. And he's like, we've got to get better at secure coding, just in general, which, that's a whole thing, but it's, not that we don't know that, but it's just good to just keep that in mind, kind of a deal. But it's, and then one other one really quick, because I'm interested in some of the ones that you went to as well.
Thank you, Daniel.
Okay, you got Daniel. Yeah. Nice 80s. That's right. No, I want to play global thermonuclear war. With that, do you remember like the 8-inch big floppy disk? You put it in and, Matthew Broderick. It's good stuff.
You mean the save icon?
Oh, look, you 3D printed the save icon. That's crazy. Yeah, exactly. But anyway, really quick, after the cryptographers panel, the host, guy, MC kind of guy, who is in and of himself a fabulous cryptographer and security mind. Anyway, he had a chance for a little lightning round with Whitfield Diffie, which again, you think about, Diffie-Hellman, Martin Hellman, Whitfield Diffie. Whitfield Diffie's right there. He's alive today. You can go call him on the phone or whatever, right? I guess as long as you have his phone number. But he said he was talking about security and a lot of little kind of popcorn questions or whatever. But he was saying that one of the key things that he thinks about is that companies need to get on board with security, the security of their applications and all that, and not be so interested and not be so consumed with controlling their customers, learning everything about their customer. And I have to know this and that, and it's like control the customer, but rather let's focus on the security aspect of it, which
get your house in order.
Yeah. But of course, that's kind of one of those bottom line kind of questions. That's the C-level, what's the C-level executives, what are they talking about and interested in? And it's hard to debate, hey, we've got to hit our numbers in order to keep either share, you got fiduciary responsibilities to shareholders or, hey, everybody wants to make $1 or $2 or $1 million or whatever. Right. And it's like, how do you balance all that? But anyway, it was a fascinating little discussion. So.
Yeah. I remember having one of my bosses early, he's like his, and I'm sure this is a common witticism, but it's like, secure, cheap, and fast, pick two,
Right.
It's like,
yep.
If it's going to be cheap and secure, it's not going to be fast if it's, and so on.
Yeah. That whole thing. You get to choose two. That's right. Yeah.
Yep.
Good to go. Well, so how about you? I went on there and that was just the cryptographers panel, but
no, that was a good, absolutely.
Yeah.
That was a good panel. I like the conversation about the hard truths about security, where maybe our risk picture is a little bit out of focus. Overall, we're not really managing the risk well. Maybe, and I don't know if they were looking at the macro of the industry at large, or if it's the micro of any individual security organization within, a company.
Mhm.
But the idea of like, and they use the reference of playing chess, right? And for the chess players out there, it's akin to looking 1 to 2 moves ahead, and you're looking, it's like, I want to defend this rook, I want to defend this rook, I want to defend this rook, and then it's like checkmate over here, because you were so focused in on defending your rook that you didn't know that your king was under attack. And so I kind of like that analogy. It's like, you got to zoom out a little bit, look at the entire chessboard. You can't like hone in on particular tactics in your overall security strategy.
Yep. Kind of miss the forest for the trees, kind of a thing. And yeah, keep the big picture in mind, keep the main thing front of mind. Yeah, that's cool.
And one of the other points,
hey, one that I went to, and I know we're what, just a few minutes here.
Hey, real quick,
just
go ahead. One other point they made is like, we need to leave some of our legacy security practices behind. Some things just don't age well. And so, it made me think of, when we've done site reviews on DevCentral over the years and whatever, or processes or even activities that we as a team do, what sacred cows do we hold on to that aren't really effective for us or for our customers anymore? And so, they dove into that a little bit about, what things should we really move away from? And I thought that was an interesting conversation. What were you going to say?
Well, that is a great point. I think that's something kind of like what we talked about, running exercises for, disaster recovery. I think it's a good idea to visit what are those, sacred things that we need to move away from and give up. And it's, I think you need to visit that on a fairly consistent basis. But yeah, so that's a good one to think about. But another one that I went to actually earlier today was a supply chain. So talking about like the solar winds and the, fire and all that stuff, attack, but they were talking about, how do you manage the supply chain security? And it was kind of a discussion around the room. Frankly, it was like a Zoom call. That's what it ended up being. But it was kind of interesting to hear from people talk about, hey, this is how I manage risk when it comes to supply chain security and all that. Granted, there were several people on there that were like, I don't know, that's why I'm kind of here to hear from everybody else. Right. One guy talked about they run like this is not the Colonial Pipeline, by the way, but they run some kind of pipeline type, company or whatever. I don't know the details of it, but nonetheless, they had to have these drones that they hired, and they hired like a drone flying, pilot kind of company to then like fly over their pipes to make sure everything was operational and good and blah, 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 all that stuff. But they outsourced that to a drone, pilot company, whatever, right? And turns out that drone pilot company had been hacked by the Chinese, I think is what they said. And so all of the data that was being piped to now this company was also being transferred over to some Chinese hacker group or whatever. So, wow. So that was an interesting, like, man, how do you reach in? Some of them use like just basics of like, we do a survey, or we call up their CISO, or we, whatever. And we ask them, what kind of processes have you put in place? Or, maybe you implement some contracts to say, hey, if this goes south, then you owe me X, Y, and Z or whatever. But it is a challenge though. It's such a connected, kind of world that you can't do it all yourself. You have to reach out and rely on others. So fascinating stuff.
Yeah, I know you're focusing on the security side of that, but now that I'm thinking about drones on pipelines, I'm just looking at what instrumentation is on those drones besides just cameras. Is it like they got the infrared where they're looking for leaks or temperatures or anything like that? I used to work for a railroad technology company where we built like hot box detectors that they put at different places, mostly in the Southwest where it gets really, really hot. And they would look at the trucks of locomotives and trains as they went by. And if the sensors sense that any particular truck had overheated bearings, it would signal the train conductor, they'd stop the train or whatever. And that whole system's in place to help prevent derailments. Okay. And so anyway, just kind of nerding out on what technology's on those drones to see how they're actually managing their pipeline stuff.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I mean, it's such a necessary thing. I know, Josh, I always knew drones were a bad idea. But it depends on what you're doing. Are you just flying it around your house, or is this like a critical company, thing? So
yeah, I don't know if it was season 5 and season 9 of 24, but like one had a bomb that was going to go off in like San Francisco or something like that, and they landed the drone safely. But then the whole last season with Jack Bauer, anyway, that was in London, was all about the drones that were taken over by some kind of technology that allowed them to take over drones, and then they were going to bomb the snot out of London. So yeah, drones with weapons on them, I think, is a really bad idea. I'm not a fan of that.
Yeah, man. I know. I mean, obviously the Air Force does that, and they're flying it out of Nellis Air Force Base or whatever, Creech or whatever, out in Nevada, and flying it in the Middle East. And it's like, that is just, it's fascinating. And it's also like, man, what could go wrong there? But anyway, yeah, that's crazy stuff. Good to go, man. Yeah, but so far it's been a great conference. A lot of great information, and it'll continue tomorrow and into Thursday. So we're excited to do a couple more of these, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, we'll be back here at noon Pacific tomorrow and Thursday for a little more RSA action, and we'll have again Sander Vinberg's going to join us from F5 Labs tomorrow to talk about the application protection report. Of ransom and redemption. It's like of mice and men. It's going to be a Steinbeck novel for sure. Yeah. So Sander will drop not only the wisdom of security, but he'll do it in fine verse as well.
Iambic pentameter or whatever, maybe he'll end with a little haiku or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know if it was Steinbeck or it was one of the other, great American authors, but I remember reading, that he would work so hard on polishing like one sentence. Like his goal would be to get through a single day of writing and have a really polished one sentence. Then I read some modern literature, and it's like, yeah, maybe they should at least spend 10 minutes on a sentence. So maybe the Twitter people can learn from that a bit. I don't know. Just saying. Maybe so. Well, John, this has been fantastic, and
a lot of fun.
I look forward to coming back tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel.
Yeah. Let's hang out with everybody tomorrow, same time. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun.
All right. Hope you guys can join us again tomorrow. We'll see you then.
All right. Thanks, everybody.